Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
And we are back. It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, hour number 2. If you're getting home, be sure to take us in the house with you. Not good to leave us in the car. That could be harmful to everybody here. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, and Brian Leonard. Take us in on your smartphone, your notebook, your iPad, whatever portable device that you have to listen or watch us. We appreciate that. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Let's update what's happening up at Doug Kingsmore. It's Winthrop going to the 9th, leading Clemson 8-7. Tigers had a 1-2-3, bottom of the 8th. So it is Winthrop with 14 hits today, 8-14, and no errors. They've left 10. And Clemson with 7 runs on 7 hits and 1 error. Pitching-wise for Clemson today, it has not been good. Weatherly started, gave up 5 hits, 3 runs. Marr came in, 2/3 of an inning. He gave up 6 hits, 3 runs. Miller came in, followed by Huggins, and then Spires came in and got an out after giving up the hits. And Clemson finds itself in an 8-7 situation. Go ahead.
Clemson, a little bit of a tie in there with Winthrop's coach. He was an assistant at Clemson for 8 seasons, and also a situation there involving some ties there with his kid as well. So in that regard, there's a lot as well from Clemson's perspective. But the thing is, we saw this Winthrop team play last week, and they didn't necessarily look like they were very strong. They came in, they didn't have a win before last season. They were bad.
I would be shocked if 70% of Winthrop's hits today were line drives. They look like bleeding,
dying quails,
bleeding through the infield, but they all count. They look like line drives in the paper or on your computer in the next day.
And USC, of course, has lost to Furman today by a final score of 6-4. So we're setting the table for the big weekend series with a couple of downers for those two teams. There'll be uppers for Furman and Winthrop if Winthrop can hang on. Some other baseball this afternoon of a note around the SEC and the ACC. Radford is leading Virginia Tech 2-1. Kentucky is losing to Western Kentucky 3-0. Both of those are in the 9th. It is Duke leading North Carolina Central 4-3. Top of the 8th inning there. Charleston with a 7-2 lead on Long Island. Bottom of the 7th. Tennessee over Middle Tennessee 5-3. That's in the 7th. And the Citadel trailing Georgia Southern 2-1. They're in the 6th inning there. Georgia shutting out Wofford 3-0. Top of the 6th, playing that game in Athens. Georgia off to a 6-1 start. Vandy 7-1 is pounding Austin Peay 11-4. That's in the bottom of the 4th. VMI and Virginia, they are underway. I don't know why they don't have a score on that one. Anyway, there you go with some of the here we go. Presbyterian beat Upstate today 3-2. Improving to 4-6, and North Carolina shut out High Point 10-0. North Carolina out of the gate slowly. A 4-5 start for the Tar Heels so far this year.
It's early.
Well, it is, but you know what? Teams that lose these midweek games to these
lesser squads,
these lower level teams, that's an indicator.
Yeah,
a lot of times, and it will come back to hurt you when the at-large selections are picked for the tournament, and that RPI is taking a dink or two here from losing those games. So they're still very valuable games, and you can't win them all in baseball. I get that, but you don't want to lose too many of those games to a lower RPI teams in the midweek. Let's see. In the 9th inning here, Winthrop has 2 outs. Nobody on 8-7, so we'll see if Clemson can get out of this, and the Tigers will try and stage a rally in the bottom of the 9th. Tomorrow night up at Clemson, Tigers playing their last home basketball game. It's against Florida State, team that beat them down in Tallahassee just a couple of weeks ago. That's when Shelton Mitchell suffered the concussion that cost him a couple of games. The Tigers will be trying to bounce back from that and get their 22nd win on the season against a Florida State team that's it's always a tough team to beat. They have the great size inside. They're going for their 20th win of the season, Florida State, and it'll be a big game for them too as they're trying to enhance their NCAA tournament resume as well. Earlier today, Brad Brownell met with the media to preview the final home game for the Tigers tomorrow night.
But obviously the last chance for a couple of these guys, especially a guy like Gabe who's done a lot for our program, to be playing in Littlejohn. Certainly playing a talented team in Florida State who got us last time. Great size, length, athleticism. Really come after you aggressively on defense. And you got to rebound and fire out of the ball when you play them. So, hopefully we'll have a good practice again today. I thought we did yesterday, and be ready to kind of finish things out with a nice home slate. So, questions?
Coach, you were trailing regulation that game in Tallahassee, season high 21 turnovers. You expect to see a good dose of press from them? Yeah,
they're pressure. They pressure pretty much most games, and they get after you both at the half and full court. It's a difficult team to run your normal offense again because they don't allow you to make as many passes as a lot of the other teams do. So you got to make some adjustments that way. I thought by and large our guys did a lot of great things in the game. That was one of the games I think I mentioned at one time where we got 7 or 8 game goals, but we didn't win the game. And I don't know that I've coached a game where that's happened. But obviously the turnovers were a problem. We had live ball turnovers, which is the worst because they went and dunked it about 4 or 5 times. And certainly that was what sparked their comeback. And we just weren't able to finish the game.
Do you concern yourself with all these tie-breaking scenarios and
not really
finish where?
No, I don't really worry a lot about it. Just try to win games and, see where we fall. I'm not one of these coaches that's got his head in the sand though all the time and says he doesn't ever watch any other games. I certainly keep an eye on. I don't watch games at home at night start to finish, but I peek at games certainly. But I'm not, really concerned whether it's 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th, or whatever, 8th, or whatever we end up. Certainly I want to win as many as we can to put us in the best position for ACC and NCAA tournament. And obviously our guys have a chance to break a school record with 11 wins. So I think that would be a nice touch for this group.
Kind of piggybacking off the tie-breaking scenarios, though, it seems like, Virginia is set, but it seems like 2 through 11 are still up for grabs. So what does that say about the parity in the ACC this season?
Yeah, Virginia separated themselves, but there's I think it's almost every year it's this way where there's so many good teams that it's hard to separate yourself. That's why what Virginia did is so good that it's, you're going to go through this league and have losses because the challenge to win on the road and even protect your home court is great. It's extremely competitive. We have great coaching with unbelievable talent and good home environments. So it's hard to be successful. 9-9 in this league is really good.
Florida has 2 points.
All right, Brad Brownell from earlier today talking about the Tigers and Florida State. Tomorrow night, Tigers, of course, with the exception of one guy, are back at full strength, which is good. Shelton Mitchell able to go through full practice and all that. Of course, they're without Grantham for the rest of the season. And so they'll see if they can pick up another key win. They've got a trip up to Syracuse. I guess it's pretty ridiculous, but I guess they're going to come back to South Carolina after Syracuse and turn around and go back up to Brooklyn for the tournament. That would make sense because at this point, unless they're going to play on Tuesday, don't you think it would make more sense for them just to go to New York City from Syracuse?
That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
But I think, the way that it works is that they have to get them back and go to class and things of that nature.
Class. Who cares about class? Let's stay up and party in New York for a couple of days.
I thought about going up to that Syracuse game and then just doubling back to go to New York, but I really don't want to see that game. That's going to be an ugly, just Syracuse. I just hate Syracuse.
Will they play zone?
Yeah, they'll be cowardly and play zone. I just don't like Syracuse.
Clemson and Winthrop, update that very quickly. It is 8-8 Tigers have tied it.
More of your calls are coming up on Sports Talk. Hit us up at 800-956-7266.
And back we are, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Our phone number, 800-956-7266. A reminder that our good friends at Founders Federal Credit Union, for you to check out foundersfcu.com. Learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Tigers and Eagles going to the 10th, tied up at 8, but Clemson found a way to win in the bottom of the 9th when things looked like Tigers are going to end up on the short end of the stick. They find a way to win. It was a home run for the Tigers by Patrick Cromwell.
They haven't won yet. They found a way to extend, if you will.
Yeah, they haven't won yet. It's going to extra innings, but I mean, they found a way. You're right, to tie it up and avoid a defeat at this particular point in time.
Don't count chickens yet.
Cromwell with the home run for Clemson, his only hit of the day so far, ties things at 8. That's one thing about a Monty Lee team that we've noticed now into his third year is they don't go down quietly even when they are facing a big deficit. And Monty has been proud of talking about that, how he approaches that situation, how his players approach that situation, never giving up on a game, never giving up on that bat. And they fought their way back. They were up 4-0. They were down 8-4 going to the bottom of the 6th and got 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th and a run in the bottom of the 9th to tie things up at 8 as they go to the 10th at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. We should be able to bring you later on tonight some comments from Mark Kingston, USC baseball coach. I got to believe he's not going to be real happy with his team's performance today. 3 errors in a 6-4 loss to Furman. Back-to-back losses, 1 to Charleston Southern and 1 to Furman for the Gamecocks as they prepare for the weekend series against Clemson. 800-956-7266, our number if you want to join us here on Sports Talk. Will Muschamp met with us earlier today over at USC for about a half hour or so to preview the start of spring practice, touched on a bunch of different items, answered a lot of different questions. I'll say this about Muschamp. He is very impressive in answering questions from the media. He's not an emotional talker. He doesn't say more than what's necessary, but he answers every question straight on. And if it's a question that requires a 2-word answer, that's what you get. If it's a question that requires elaboration, that's what you will get. But he has, and this should be something that is understood and taken for granted, not something that you praise a guy for. But considering when Spurrier was there, I think it's safe to say that Spurrier didn't have the full grasp of his roster, of his players. Muschamp has the complete knowledge without a single note about everybody on his team, everybody who was coming in. He is fully engrossed in building this program and in recruiting. He pointed out again today that spring football games are for 2 things. One is recruiting. In this particular case, he was talking about playing on March 31st because it's a great day for recruiting. They're the only SEC team playing a spring game on that day. And also from an injury standpoint, if you get hurt in the game and it's not debilitating, then you'll have a chance to recover in time to resume practice in August. So my point is, very impressed again with his knowledge of his team and the way that he has put his hands around the entire program, which is something South Carolina has needed for a long, long time. They've got a guy now who I believe is fully invested in the program and is there for the long term. I'll be very surprised if, as long as Ray Tanner is at South Carolina and running things in the athletic department, I'd be very surprised if Muschamp continues to do well that anybody can entice him away because of what Ray Tanner in South Carolina did to resurrect his career, if loyalty still means anything today.
In my mind, he does do a little bit too much of the try to talk over you with schematics and talk about, almost kind of try to elevate the football discussion.
He's not talking over Ben Briner. I think Ben Briner could sit there and match him schematically for schematically.
And I probably could as well, but there probably aren't that many people who understand.
Hang on a second. Let's don't get crazy here.
A lot of people who don't necessarily understand the breakdown of a 6-man protection or, a crossing this way and then things of that nature. But as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that Will Muschamp at least knows how to do, he knows how to command the room, and he gives South Carolina an ambassador where you can, on the level of a Dabo Sweetie, somebody who can be a front-facing member of the football program. I don't know if they necessarily had that with Steve Spurrier. Now, Steve Spurrier loved to glad hand and kiss babies and do stuff like that, but you never really got the feel, especially in the latter part of his time at South Carolina, that he was all fully in it. You get that with Will Muschamp.
That's the latter part. because Steve Spurrier didn't have anything to prove. Muschamp
Still
does at the age of 46. The other thing is, here's what I understand schematically. Here's the perfect scheme that Rice has. Here's Alabama standing there, and Alabama wins. I don't care what kind of scheme.
Well, that's true.
You
got to have the players.
You got to have the horses.
Here is Muschamp from today talking about the offense and the new pieces coming together there, and also, of course, getting an early start from their standpoint on spring practice.
Well, I think schematically we're very similar to some things he's done at Ole Miss, and we were already kind of doing here, and continuing to identify what do our players do best. But I think trying to dictate the tempo of the game more than anything, changing tempos, but playing at a faster pace as much as anything.
Is it something as simple as junking what you did in the past offensively and starting fresh, or will the things that you take from last year and bring forward?
No, we did some good things. At the end of the day, we got to score more points. So I thought that the inside zone's the inside zone, a stretch play's a stretch play, a gap play's a gap play, and six-man protection's a six-man protection. We've got to continue to improve and execute better in those situations, which to me, when you talk in terms of execution, that goes back to coaching them better and putting our guys in better situations to be successful.
In terms of early enrollees, how much can a good spring vault them into playing time in the fall, or is this kind of a period just to kind of get their feet wet and get them accustomed to the speed of things?
No, we need to find out who can help us. We don't have a deep enough roster right now to get anybody's feet wet. So at the end of the day, we're going to throw them in the ocean and see what happens. And I've been very pleased with those guys and how their work ethic and how they've come in and worked and continued. You've seen the improvement in just in a 3-week time that we've been with them. As far as how they've continued to evolve, and but we're expecting those guys. They get an opportunity to go out for 15 days and prove their mettle, what they can do for our football team to help us. And if they can help us, they'll play. It's no different. I told them in the recruiting: if you're good enough, you'll play. If you're the best, you'll start. That's up to you, not me.
Coach, I know last year you guys had the spring game pretty early. You guys started spring ball quickly. What are some of the advantages being able to do that? And I wouldn't call it disadvantages, but what are some of the biggest challenges having to start earlier?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is being able to really watch your film and digest your film from the season, because we spend a lot of time working on what we did and what we need to do to improve. So our staff has spent a lot of time being able to do that. Obviously, having a change on the offensive side of the ball. We've spent some weekends up here and some late nights up here trying to get things done to get ready for spring. But, the two most important things to me as far as our team is concerned is our team and their health and recruiting. And so when you're able to have a spring game that's early, there's no other SEC teams having a spring game on March 31st. So I'm not competing with anybody to get a young man on our campus on March 31st. And from that standpoint, in the first standpoint is our team and their health. We have a spring game March 31st. If there is an injury, I've got another month for a young man to get back for the fall. And that's a whole another month to get ready instead of having it on April 21st and you got to wait a week to have surgery and now you're drifting into May. So the two most important things to me is our team and recruiting, and that's going to help as much as anything. The one thing I have learned here, there is no good weekend in the spring for a spring game. There's a lot going on, and I've gotten all your emails. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your support. But the most important thing, let's go back and talk in terms of our team and recruiting, and to get as many of those guys on campus. We're going to have a great crowd for the spring game, but I know one thing: on September 1st, we're going to have 80,000 in there, and that's the most important thing. And I know we'll have a great crowd because our as passionate fan base that we have.
Okay, there you go with Will Muschamp from his press conference earlier today at USC, and tomorrow we'll hear from Brian McClendon, the new offensive coordinator. He'll be talking after practice. We'll bring that to you tomorrow. Also, of course, Dabo Swinney tomorrow from up at Clemson. All right, time to talk some NASCAR here on Sports Talk with the presidents of Darlington Raceway. We welcome KT Kerry Tharp back into Sports Talk. Big day for the Fords in Atlanta. Now, oftentimes I've heard over the decades around NASCAR, this track is a Ford track. This track is a Chevy track. I've always heard Atlanta identified as more with the Fords. Do you believe that to be the case, that certain manufacturers just do better at certain places?
Well, I don't know, Phil. It's doing well. I'm not so sure. I used to think that Michigan was a track that the Fords ran well at, but I tell you what, that horsepower that the Fords have now is very impressive, and we could be saying here the next 5 or 6 weeks that every track is a Ford track, but they certainly were dominant on Sunday over Atlanta. Finishers all four, and Kevin Harvick.
All right, let's put KT on hold, if you would. KT, we're having a problem with your cell. You're dropping in and out about every other word. So let's, Brian, reestablish that with him, and we'll come back to him. But you talk about your Fords. Harvick, Keselowski, and Boyer, 1 through 3. Logano in a Ford was 6th. Kurt Busch was 8th. And Ryan Blaney was 12th. That's about half of the field in the top 12 in a Ford. So a dominant performance, and KT is back with us now. And you talk about the horsepower. What's happened on the Ford side of things to generate more horsepower?
Well, working with the Roush Yates engines, I think that they've come on to something the last couple of years, and I think that their horsepower is maybe gotten a little bit ahead of the Chevrolet and Toyotas here early on in 2018. And, and you also take a look, Phil, at who's actually running the Fords now. I think with Stewart-Haas Racing moving over to Ford last year, that's a pretty strong race team over there with Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, Kurt Busch, and now Eric Almirola all driving the Ford. So you're also, bringing in some pretty good drivers and some pretty good race teams back into that side of the things. But I think that the development they've done, the R&D that Roush Yates engines have done over the past couple of years are starting to pay off. And, we'll see how things go here the next few weeks as they head out west. But so far, so good for the Ford camp.
Do you think we are just going to have the 3 manufacturers for many more years to come? Any chance Chrysler gets back into the mix or some other manufacturer?
I certainly think that there's a good opportunity for it to happen, Phil. I know that there's talks going on off and on with other manufacturers. I think NASCAR has expressed interest in having at least one manufacturers back into their to the Cup Series. So that takes a little bit of time for that to happen. I don't see anything imminent, but we had Dodge in there a few years ago, and would certainly love to see them come back. And who knows that maybe, by 2020, we could have another manufacturer in there. I think it would be good for the sport. And, I think it would be good for the fans too. I think the fans would enjoy having another manufacturer out there. And so I think that there's work being done in that area, but it does take some time.
Mm-hmm.
You said this horsepower development has been done over, I guess, working with it over the last 2 years, but is this a response? Is this a wake-up call that Ford got from Toyota that has them where they are, at least in this early sample count we have?
Well, I think you make a great point, Tom. I think it was. I think Toyota was kicking everybody's butt over the last couple of years. And so I know in the offseason in particular, the folks at Ford made a concerted effort to try to get that horsepower up. And a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of testing, a lot of R&D. And it's just, it takes some time to get that developed. And so I think that I think Chevrolet is the same boat. Chevrolet's coming out with a new Camaro this year. And certainly they look good at Daytona, winning the Daytona 500 and coming in second with Bubba Wallace. I think that Ford is a good run.
All right, let's put KT back on hold for a second. KT, you breaking up on us? Sound like you're up in the mountains or something. It's getting a little clippy there with your words. Just put him back on hold, Brian, and see if we can reestablish a better connection. Up at Clemson, Tigers got corners and nobody out. In an 8-8 game, they have a walk and a single to put runners on first and third, and they've got the catcher Wilkie's got a hit today. He's batting 115. He's at the plate with all kind of options to get the winning run in for the Tigers. KT is not with us. He's going to call us back. Okay, I was about to go back to his line, and I see his line is blank. So we'll get back to KT, Kerry Tharp. Boy, how big would this be in terms of momentum and confidence for Clemson should they pull this game
They've
out?
had a couple of these this year already. I mean, the Friday night game against William and Mary, where they came back from 3 down in the ninth in order to score 3 with 2 out and get themselves an extra inning victory there. It's something that has become, like we said, a real characteristic of this Monty Lee-led ball club.
It's kind of a staple of his program so far, just the ability to not cash it in and hang in there and try and figure out a way to win. KT, Kerry Tharp, rejoining us here. So go ahead with your comments you were making there, KT.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think that the Fords were really concerted effort in the off season trying to get that horsepower up. And, you know, like I said, Toyota had really kind of dominated the series the last couple of years, particularly last year, the second half of last season. And so I think there was a lot of work done in the off season on the engine front, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resources put into it. And, you know, you look at Chevrolet, they've come back with a new car, the Camaro, and certainly had a great Daytona 500 with it. So it's a very competitive landscape out there with these manufacturers. Nobody wants to lose to another one. They may be friends away from the track, but when they get to the racetrack, it's very competitive. And so there's a lot that they put into this. They spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, and take a lot of pride in being the top manufacturer in the sport. So I think right now it looks like Ford may be ahead of the game a little bit when it comes to horsepower, but you know, we'll see over the next few weeks as we head out west.
How does that at least deal with the aggression? Because we're going to get a lot of the same kind of tracks here in succession, KT. Does that affect, as we go along, just how aggressive the drivers will be over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think it does, without a doubt. We go to another mile-and-a-half racetrack this weekend at Las Vegas. It's a little bit different than Atlanta. The racing surface is not as aged or as abrasive as the surface at Atlanta is, but it's still a very, very fast racetrack. And then we go to a mile track at Phoenix, which is pretty much of a unique layout. Then we go to 2 mile track out at Fontana. So I think that I think you are going to see some drivers up on the wheel. It's the stage racing plays a big part of that. Getting as many points as you can. You look at it right now, Joey Logano is actually leading the points, but he hasn't won a race, but he's won a couple of stages. And so, those stage points and bonus points can add up towards the end of the season. But I think you're going to see some aggressive driving here the next few weeks. I really do.
All right, a minute left. So where are we this week in the work at your place, putting those new seats in and getting rid of some of the old seats?
Well, I tell you what, Phil, I was inside the track today, and all of the old metal spare seats that we were going to take out from Tyler and Wallace have been removed. And then we're probably about halfway through removing all the metal chairback seats out of Colvin, which is the original front stretch, now the back stretch. And so once that work is done, we have a good bit of repair work we have to do on the concrete, the steps there, and we'll start putting the seats in. And so, like I said, those folks are busy at it. They got a lot of work to do still ahead of them. We're putting in some guardrails. We're putting in a lot of things underneath the grandstand as well. So, there's a lot going on, and certainly it looks like there might be some time to get it done, but no rest for the weary over at Darlington Raceway.
All right, KT, you guys stay on it. We thank you. We'll talk to you next week. Good stuff as always.
Sounds good. Y'all have a great week.
You too, sir. Kerry Tharp from Darlington. Clemson has won it. Wilkie with a single up the middle. Clemson comes back to beat Winthrop 9-8. Stays undefeated going into the big Palmetto Series this weekend, beginning Friday night in Columbia. Be right back.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
All right, Clemson gets the win over Winthrop, 9-10-1 for the Tigers. They improved to 8-0. Winthrop 8-14-0. I think Winthrop had won 3 in a row. Weren't they 0-5?
They were 0-5 after losing to South Carolina on last Tuesday. So
yeah, Wilkie with the game-winning hits up the middle for the RBI, gets the run in. Tigers come back from an 8-4 deficit to win 9-8. So, you know, if you're Monty Lee, a couple of things you like here. Number one, the no-quit attitude of your team. Number two, the offense was big today, coming from behind, generating some key runs, key hits in critical situations. You're not happy that your pitching couldn't handle a 4-0 lead. You let it get away in the early innings. But then you're happy that the back end of your bullpen that you used today came in and did the job.
Note from the NCAA, at least in the ACC, we have just going across the crawl here is Bonzi Colson will return to action tomorrow night for Notre Dame.
Oh,
for them against Pittsburgh. So that could be.
They need him against them.
Well, I'm just saying that gives him maybe a little bit ahead of steam with 2 games left to play in the ACC. Could make Notre Dame a scary sleeper in the tournament up in New York.
No doubt.
Where they will have a lot of fans.
And they also have to have him in there so the NCAA say they're full strength and may let them ease into the back door if they do something in the tournament.
It makes a difference for them. No doubt about it. It makes a difference. Let's update some basketball. We've got the Big South tournament underway now. Charleston Southern hosting Presbyterian tonight. What's the score?
Yeah, and the runs are scarce. I know it's 25-16 Charleston Southern at the half over Presbyterian. The other game is up in North Carolina where Longwood leads High Point 31-20.
Okay, got a game going on in the SEC. Looks like Florida's having no trouble with Alabama and Tuscaloosa tonight.
35-18 there. Vanderbilt with a 32-30 lead at the half on Missouri. Again, no Michael Porter for Missouri again, despite the fact that he went through warm-ups, did not attempt to play. And, you know, it's odd looking at some of these other games, too. The SEC has so much fluctuation that could happen. South Carolina could finish as high as 9th, depending on how the weekend goes. There are some people who could finish as high as 3rd and as low as 8th. So still a lot to be decided in that tournament. There's you got a lot of teams that are kind of around the 2 over 500, 2 under 500 mark.
Yeah, Tennessee, Mississippi State playing down in Starkville tonight. It's a close one, as you might expect, between two teams with similar records. Mississippi State's had a terrific bounce-back year under Ben Howland, 20-8, 9-7 in the league. And, of course, Tennessee, the same thing with Rick Barnes, 21-7, 11-5, 38-34 Vols late in the first half there. That'd be a very big RPI-boosting road win for Tennessee if they get that. Let's see. Longwood is leading High Point in the Big South, 31-20. The Big South uses home courts in the opening couple of rounds. I think when they get to the semifinals, they go to the home court of the highest seeded team. Yes. I think I'm right on that. And what else you got, sir?
Another note from Clemson baseball. This is from our friend Tim Beret. They're now 8-0 for just the 3rd time since 2000. The other 2 years, 2002 and 2010, those years, Clemson reached the Final Four, the College World Series.
Hoping to hear from USC baseball coach Mark Kingston, but nothing has become available from that yet, so we're not able to bring any of his thoughts to you. I imagine, have you seen any tweets or anything from anybody? I imagine he was none too happy with his team's performance today, just based on his attitude after losing Sunday to Charleston Southern. I mean, he was really an unhappy guy, I thought, and I imagine today that 3 errors early on. It did not lead to any unearned runs, but it led to some extra work by the pitching staff. And they just looked to me when I was out there. I was there until 5:30. They looked lethargic to me out there. There was a ground ball, Cullen playing at first base. There was a ground ball that I didn't think he made much of an effort to get to. I mean, it was hit decently, but it wasn't a line drive or anything. He didn't really make much of an effort to get a glove out there.
Anybody knows when you're not hitting as a baseball team, that can have a debilitating effect, especially when you have guys go out in the field. And the old phrase, hitting is contagious. Well, that's no more true, especially at the college baseball level. You look at what Winthrop did today. I mean, they had guys who were staying with pitches and going with pitches and, taking what the pitcher gave them, and they were able to carve out a pretty big lead. Clemson comes back and beats them. And South Carolina right now just seems to be scuffling, even dating back to Sunday's game against Charleston Southern. They can't seem to put the bat on the ball at the right time. And like we said, they're trying to change the culture of the way that they want they want to take more of an MLB type approach, with launch angles and exit velocity and things of that nature, getting more balls up in the air. That's not something that happens right overnight. It takes time.
Well, the key point is that's why I say there has to be a sort of happy medium with this getting balls in the air. Winthrop didn't get a ball in the air, and they scored 8 runs. Ground balls. You just hit the baseball. As the guy said, you hit a curveball when you're looking for a curveball, hit a fastball, and hit it. And then when there's 2 strikes on you, you hit a baseball, no matter where it is, because you got to protect the plate. South Carolina, let's face it, even when they were winning, they weren't an offensive juggernaut. But what they did, and Corn points it out, 3 errors, is uncharacteristic of a South Carolina baseball team. When you beat South Carolina, you had to score. They would not give you scores or give you opportunity to get extra runs. Whereas this defense, if you're any long-term worry, it would be, in my mind, defensively. This team has to be better defensively.
Well, I mean, time will tell what will happen. We're still trying to figure some things out and watching Mark Kingston's coaching style and habits and things of that nature. Based on what I've seen, and I've seen him a lot here in the last week, just catching the early part of the afternoon games and then there on Sunday. I have not seen Clemson in person yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing them this weekend. But a pitcher can even out everything. We know that, but with all things considered equal between Hennessy and Hill, and considering that they will both throw good games on Friday, I still have to lean towards Clemson with the offense. The top of their batting order, even though Beer's not hitting for a high average, you have to respect everything about him at the plate. Williams is hitting for a high average and for power. Davidson's not hitting for much right now, but he's a very dangerous leadoff hitter. And Clemson is been playing pretty solid defense all the way around. And they've got that attitude going right now. And I wonder about South Carolina and their mental approach coming out of this loss today.
You'll worry about bullpen depth too with South Carolina, and you worry about the ability of the Saturday and Sunday starters to be able to go deep into games. They've not shown that ability over the course of the first couple of weeks, and I think Clemson has the ability to bring in guys who can really be shutdown guys like Miller and guys at the end there that can be big shutdown guys for them when it comes down to keeping the South Carolina squad off balance. I think the other thing that is been a struggle for them is that they've seen a lot of different arms, and I think so much so when you have guys who aren't necessarily as experienced. I mean, you only have a couple of seniors. I mean, Stokes is obviously somebody who has been there a while, but there aren't a lot of guys who have got a lot of experience seeing these calendar arms. It'll be very interesting to see how they go about their approach this weekend against really the first high-quality opponent that they'll play.
All right, as far as the offense for Clemson today, Cromwell had the big hit. Had the home run to tie the game. He's batting .375 now. Williams had a couple of hits, including a home run, 3 RBIs on the day. He's batting .387. Jolly has been a pleasant surprise on offense. He's batting .440. He had a hit today. Wharton has been a tremendous newcomer addition out in the outfield. He's batting .308. He had a couple of hits, a couple of RBIs today. Bird had a couple of hits. And so even down at the bottom of the lineup, Wilkie, the catcher, had 2 hits. He's batting .148. So the Tigers can throw a pretty difficult lineup, especially at the top. If Davidson gets it going offensively, you have to worry really about 1 through 6 in their lineup as a pitching staff when you look at guys who are swinging pretty good bats.
And Beer hasn't necessarily hit his stride yet either. He's only hitting .259, and you know that's going to change.
Well, he seems to enjoy himself against the Gamecocks. I think he likes to beat them as much as anybody else they face. He seems to always come up with the big hit against them. Tomorrow we'll hear from Brian McClendon from USC, Dabo Sweeney from Clemson, and more. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.